In this podcast, we will look at LGBT community news events. Beginning with Oklahoma, where murder charges are still possible in Benedict's death. Then, in Ohio, college student charged with hate crime for urinating on pride flag. In Missouri, City of Columbia declares itself an LGBTQ sanctuary city. In Virginia, State Senator Danica Roem misgendered by Virginia Lieutenant Governor. In Florida, a gay man was convicted of threatening to kill former U.S. Representative George Santos. And then we finish with an update to gay news anchor Don Lemon's firing from the CNN network.
First we go to Oklahoma. Despite previous statements, Owasso police have not ruled out murder as the cause of death of non-binary 16-year-old Benedict. By John Riley on February 28, 2024. Police in Owasso, Oklahoma, have not ruled out the possibility of murder charges in the death of non-binary teenager Benedict, despite having previously stated that Benedict's sudden death on February 8 was not caused by trauma suffered during a fight in the Owasso High School girls' bathroom. On February 7, Benedict and a friend were involved in an altercation with 3 other students, during which Benedict struck their head on the floor. The fight was broken up, with all parties walking under their own power, accompanied by school staff, to both the assistant principal's and nurses' offices. The nurse determined that no ambulance service was required, but advised Benedict's mother take them to a hospital for further examination. Benedict went to the hospital, but was later released. The following day, they collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital, where the 16-year-old was declared dead. Following Benedict's death, Owasso police posted a statement to the department's Facebook page asserting that, based on preliminary information from the state medical examiner's office, Benedict did not die as a result of trauma. The official autopsy report and toxicology results have not yet been made publicly available. However, according to an interview that Lieutenant Nick Boatman, a spokesperson for the Owasso Police Department, gave to the news website Popular Information, the department may have prematurely jumped to conclusions regarding the death. While it is not standard practice for the department to release piecemeal information regarding the cause of death before the medical examiner issues a report, Boatman admitted that the department had reached out to the state medical examiner's office to try to head off some of this national scrutiny, noting that Owasso High School had received several threats, including at least one that was deemed credible. Boatman told Popular Information that the medical examiner did not explicitly tell him that Benedict did not die from something as a result of that fight, but that was how he interpreted the medical examiner's comments. Boatman added that the medical examiner emphasized they were waiting for toxicological results, which he interpreted as kind of a red flag, saying he is assuming when I get that toxicology report back, something's going to be there. There is no indication at this time that Benedict's collapse on the day following the fight was drug or substance-induced. The medical examiner will not determine a cause of death until they receive toxicology results from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, a process that could take several weeks. Boatman acknowledged criticism, particularly from pro-LGBTQ groups, that the initial statement from the Owasso Police Department echoed many of the talking points contained in a release from Owasso Public Schools, even copying verbatim large chunks of text from the school department's release. He said that the purpose of the police statement was to communicate that police have confirmed the school did all those things after collecting written statements from various school officials, including the school nurse and school resource officer. Boatman acknowledged that the police department's statement came across as us being a voice piece for the school. Yet despite the department's initial statement, a February 9 affidavit for a search warrant, filed by an Owasso police detective, says that police were still investigating Benedict's death as a murder. Boatman confirmed that, telling Popular Information that murder charges are still on the table. Owasso police have also been criticized for releasing a video of an interview with Benedict and their mother at the hospital on the day of the altercation. In that video, Benedict said that 3 girls had attacked them and their friend after Benedict poured water on them for mocking the way they laugh. Benedict's mother, Sue, says in that video she wishes to press charges, but the officer tells her that because Nick started the fight by pouring the water on the other girls, they could be sued for assault. But even those statements by the officer are being criticized by legal experts as a misrepresentation of the law. Tulsa attorney Frank Brewster told ABC affiliate KTUL that, under Oklahoma law, it would be a stretch to say another individual can be allegedly physically attacked after throwing liquid on someone. An assault in the legal terminology is an act that gives rise to someone believing they're in imminent threat for injury or death, Brewster said. So an assault is very defined in the state of Oklahoma. In this instance, it's not an assault. Similarly, Colleen McCarty, executive director of the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, said the officer's claims in the released video aren't accurate. It's a commonly held misconception about self-defense, she told KTUL. When you are defending yourself, the harm or force that you use must be proportional to the harm that's being caused to you. Sue Benedict, Nex's mother, has already expressed skepticism about the police department's investigation and public statements. In a text exchange with Popular Information, she said she considered the department's official statement a big cover and believed it was only released as something to calm the people. Lawyers representing the Benedict family previously issued a statement to ABC News indicating that they are pursuing their own independent investigation into Nex's death. While various investigations are still pending, the facts currently known by the family, some of which have been released to the public, are troubling at best. We urge those tasked with investigating and prosecuting all potentially liable parties to do so fully, fairly, and expediently, the statement said. Notwithstanding, the family is independently interviewing witnesses and collecting all available evidence. The Benedict family calls on all school, local, state and national officials to join forces to determine why this happened, to hold those responsible to account and to ensure it never happens again.
Now we go to Ohio, where a university student, Trey Samuel Fetzer, faces various misdemeanor charges for vandalizing a family's pride flag and yelling homophobic remarks. By John Riley, on March 3, 2024. An Ohio State University student has been charged with a hate crime after urinating on a gay pride flag hanging on the porch of a duplex in the Wineland Park neighborhood of Columbus. Columbus City Attorney Zach Klein announced earlier this week that his office has charged 20-year-old Trey Samuel Fetzer in Franklin County Municipal Court with ethnic intimidation, more commonly known as a bias enhancement or hate crime charge, as well as misdemeanor charges of criminal mischief, criminal trespass, and disorderly conduct, reports the Columbus Dispatch. Vandalizing property and making homophobic remarks in an attempt to intimidate members of the LGBTQ+ community will not be tolerated in our city, Klein said in a statement. Columbus is diverse and tolerant, and we celebrate our LGBTQ+ community. Hate has no home here, and as long as I'm city attorney, we will continue to aggressively prosecute hate and bias crimes. Fetzer was caught by a front door web camera walking onto the porch of a home on Summit Street around 10:40 p.m. on the evening of February 8, exposing himself and peeing on the pride flag, according to an affidavit submitted by a detective from the Columbus Police Department. He then banged on the doors of the duplex and yelled homophobic remarks, saying, "Fuck the gays." The camera footage also shows him appearing to make a vulgar gesture with his middle finger during the incident. Another young man is seen on the webcam video filming Fetzer on his phone. Police were first alerted to the videotape after Zoe, a transgender mother who lives at the house, posted the video online to Reddit. "I am asking for your help. Please help us find the individuals responsible," she wrote in her post. Obviously, no one was harmed, but I am tired of being powerless. Recent legislation has only emboldened this kind of hate. The family also told police that Fetzer returned to their home on February 13 and attempted to apologize for his actions. If convicted of the charges against him, Fetzer could face hundreds of dollars in fines, possible jail time, or probation, according to Columbus NBC affiliate WCMH. His accomplice, who filmed the urination stunt, has not been charged. The incident has made some members of the family from the Summit Street house feel uneasy. "Honestly, I've been a little more anxious, I've been checking the camera feeds, I've been looking outside more, I've been more cautious," Raven, one of the family members, told Columbus CBS affiliate WBNS. Another family member, Sarah, said she worried that this incident could be a sign of worse things to come, especially given recent attacks and a larger societal backlash against members of the LGBTQ community. "None of us are looking to ruin this kid's lives," Sarah said, adding that she hopes they will learn not just that what they did was wrong but why it was wrong and how much it genuinely hurts people. "We're not looking for trouble, we're not looking for a fight, but we are looking to uplift our community and be a safe space for our community," Kiev, another resident of the duplex, told WBNS. The number of bias-motivated crimes targeting victims for their real or perceived sexual orientation increased by 17% between 2020 and 2022, according to statistics from the FBI. Bias-motivated crimes targeting victims for their gender identity increased by 32% during that same time period. Ohio has currently been enmeshed in a number of high-profile fights over transgender rights. Recently, the state legislature overrode a veto by Republican Governor Mike DeWine to impose a statewide ban on transgender athletes competing on women's sports teams and an additional prohibition on doctors that prevents them from prescribing gender-affirming treatments to transgender minors. Additionally, DeWine's administration proposed a series of regulations intended to slow-walk the approval of transition-related procedures for transgender adults to ensure people were not being rushed into pursuing medical procedures. But those regulations were criticized for their lack of flexibility and the burden they would have placed on transgender individuals seeking out gender-affirming care. Those regulations were eventually rolled back following widespread opposition during a recent public comment period. The state also recently blocked several transgender candidates from seeking public office because they didn't include their dead names on election paperwork in violation of a rarely publicized state law that election officials failed to inform candidates of when they were collecting signatures to land on the primary ballot. 3 of those candidates were eventually cleared to run in this year's upcoming elections.
Some encouraging news now. The City of Columbia has approved a sanctuary ordinance that urges law enforcement to deprioritize enforcing any anti-LGBTQ state laws. By John Riley, March 1, 2024. Columbia, Missouri, has declared itself a sanctuary city for LGBTQ residents, potentially setting up a future fight with Republican state officials who have prioritized measures to restrict LGBTQ rights and visibility. Last week, following 3 hours of public comment and a half-hour of debate, the Columbia City Council voted 6-1 to amend its Sanctuary City Ordinance to provide protections for LGBTQ individuals, according to the Columbia Daily Tribune. Under the language of the amended ordinance, law enforcement is expected either not to pursue charges, or deprioritize the enforcement of any laws imposing criminal or civil penalties against individuals who seek out or assist others in obtaining gender-affirming care. This is in direct reference to Missouri's law prohibiting minors from accessing such treatments, which Republican Governor Mike Parson signed into law last year. That law also prohibits adult Medicaid recipients from having the cost of any transition-related procedures covered, meaning they must pay for such services out of pocket. Authorities are also encouraged to deprioritize arresting, detaining, or transferring individuals to other states for seeking out gender-affirming care for themselves or their children, in violation of their own state's laws. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey has been dogged in his insistence that the ban on health care for transgender minors be enforced, even demanding that local police, especially in Kansas City and St. Louis, arrest individuals for violating it. This is despite the fact that the law only imposes civil, and not criminal, penalties. Additional amendments to the ordinance deprioritize the enforcement of penalties against people who use public bathrooms that don't match their assigned sex at birth. Another provision in the bill deprioritizes any enforcement of efforts to prohibit drag performances in public. The ordinance also states that the city will not take affirmative steps to gather or disseminate information on an individual's assigned sex at birth, and will not require disclosure of one's assigned sex at birth to receive benefits, employment, or city services. City officials have argued that the ordinance does not prohibit the city from following state law, but simply makes enforcement of anti-LGBTQ laws the lowest priority for law enforcement officers. Kansas City adopted a similar resolution in May 2023. At the meeting last week, a majority of those offering public comment supported the ordinance, with some arguing it is necessary to protect LGBTQ individuals from being targeted by law enforcement for attempting to live as their true selves. The queer community is already a minority community in the United States, so having our voices heard, that recognition, that safety that makes us feel protected is really important. It's essential, said Anthony Plogger, the co-founder of the LGBTQ group Inclusion Plus. Some dissenters pushed back, expressing concerns that the ordinance would prohibit them from expressing religious views opposing homosexuality. Others fretted that passing an ordinance might inspire backlash from legislators who approved the ban on transgender health care. But others cited increasing violence against transgender individuals in schools and in public spaces as a concern, arguing that law enforcement should not further seek to criminalize or persecute transgender individuals. In July 2022, in Camden, Ohio, a young transgender man named Noah Ruiz was beaten by 3 cisgender men after using a woman's restroom, said a transgender man who spoke at the meeting. The owner of the faculty had instructed him to use the woman's room because he was assigned female at birth. Do you think his attackers let up when he explained he had a vagina? No, they called him homophobic slurs as they beat him.
Now, a look at the questionable behavior of Virginia's Lieutenant Governor, Winsome Earl-Sears, who first refused to apologize for calling trans lawmaker by a male honorific, then said she had no intent to offend. By John Riley, February 27, 2024. On Monday, the Virginia Senate went into recess when Democrats who control the chamber walked out in solidarity with Senator Danica Roem, Democrat for Manassas, after Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears misgendered Roem by referring to her with the honorific, Sir. The exchange began as Roem asked Earl-Sears, presiding over the Senate, about the number of votes required for a bill to pass under a particular rule. Yes, sir, that would be 32, Earl-Sears said, prompting Roem to put down her microphone and walk out of the chamber. Democrats, led by Senate Majority Leader Scott Suravel, Democrat for Mount Vernon, called a recess, grinding business in the state's upper chamber to a halt. Initially, Earl-Sears refused to apologize. However, after a second recess, she addressed both sides of the chamber, saying, "I apologize." Earl-Sears appeared agitated while speaking, reported the Petersburg area The Progress Index. She said she meant no disrespect in her comment, but chastised Senate Democrats for what she claimed was showing disrespect towards me, appearing to reference her status as Virginia's first-ever black female lieutenant governor. Earl-Sears claimed there was no intent to offend when she referred to Roem using male honorifics, claiming to have misspoken, noting that we are all equal under the law. "I understand Senator Roem is upset," she said. "I'm not here to upset anyone. I'm here to do the job the people of Virginia have called me to do." She also likened the behavior of some senators to what we would not expect our children or our nieces and nephews to do. Roem, who became the first-out transgender lawmaker elected to a state legislature in 2017 when she ran for the House of Delegates, made history again last fall when she was elected senator, becoming the body's first transgender member and only its second-ever LGBTQ member, after fellow Senator Adam Eban, Democrat for Alexandria. Roem declined to comment on the incident in response to an inquiry from Metro Weekly. Some progressive-leaning groups rallied around Roem, blasting Earl-Sears for her rhetoric and implying that the misgendering of Roem may have been intentional. Senator Danica Roem was gracious in the face of the lieutenant governor's disrespect, but the fact is that she shouldn't have to deal with that nonsense in her workplace, Lotwila Mathias, the executive director of Progress VA, said in a statement. Winsome Sears's tired old bigotry is a relic of a previous age. Earl-Sears, elected alongside Governor Glenn Youngkin and Attorney General Jason Miers in a Republican sweep of the Commonwealth's top 3 offices in November 2021, campaigned on her socially conservative views. As part of that push, she appeared in an ad with E.W. Jackson, a right-wing pastor who failed in his 2013 bid for lieutenant governor, who has a long history of anti-LGBTQ comments, including that LGBTQ people were incapable of being judges because they would be unable to remain objective if faced with an LGBTQ rights case. She also emphasized the Youngkin mantra of parental rights when it comes to education, seizing on various controversies over pro-transgender policies in schools, including pronoun usage, attempts to ban books with inappropriate or allegedly sexual content, discussions of or policies concerning race and structural racism in schools, and masking policies during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. As lieutenant governor, Earl-Sears defended Governor Glenn Youngkin's proposed model policies that require teachers to inform on students who identify as transgender or gender nonconforming, bar transgender students from gender-affirming spaces and activities, and allow teachers and students to disregard a student's stated gender identity with respect to names or pronouns. In coming to Youngkin's defense, Earl-Sears said that school districts that balked at adopting the so-called model policies were crafting policies that destroy our families. Over 2 decades ago, in an op-ed for the Daily Press defending a proposed constitutional amendment barring same-sex couples from marrying, Sears dismissed the idea of same-sex nuptials as radical and asserted that homosexuals enjoyed sufficient rights under the law. I also believe our society has gone immeasurably beyond almost all standards in accommodating the homosexual community over the last couple of decades, she wrote.
We finished today with a post titled, Don Lemon to be paid $24.5 million by CNN to settle firing. Don Lemon, set to launch his own news show on X, has reached a multi-million-dollar separation deal with former employer CNN. By John Riley, on February 27, 2024. Don Lemon, the gay former host of CNN This Morning, has reached a settlement with the network after he was unceremoniously removed from his position following controversial on-air comments. According to the Wrap, the 57-year-old Lemon has agreed to a separation deal for approximately $24.5 million, the equivalent he would have earned for serving out the remainder of his final contract, which was set to expire 3.5 years after he was pulled from the airwaves. In April 2023, Lemon, who was featured on Metro Weekly's cover in 2016, announced on X that he had learned from his agent and not from the network, for which he had worked for 17 years, that he had been terminated. He said he was never given any indication that the network was considering letting him go. He wrote that it is clear that there are some larger issues at play. Advert 1. Lemon's dismissal came after he made a controversial comment suggesting that Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, who is 51, was past her prime, in response to her assertion that political candidates over the age of 75 should be subjected to mental competency exams. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime, sorry, Lemon said, eliciting shock and surprise from his co-hosts Caitlin Collins and Poppy Harlow, who pushed back against his assertion. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s, 30s, and maybe her 40s. He brought up the subject an hour later, and was rebutted by commentator Audie Cornish. He later tweeted that he regretted his inartful and irrelevant comments. Those comments also sparked accusations of sexism and misogyny from conservatives, who accused him of engaging in a partisan attack against a Republican, and from Haley herself. Liberals can't stand the idea of having competency tests for older politicians to make sure they can do the job, Haley tweeted. By the way, it's always the liberals who are the most sexist. Lemon did not appear on air for 3 days following the comments, with then CNN CEO Chris Licht telling staffers in a memo that Lemon would undergo formal training, presumably some form of sensitivity training, before returning to the air. He later returned to the airwaves, only to later learn of his termination secondhand. Lemon later told journalist Kara Swisher that it soon became obvious that CNN's strategy for gaining more viewers after struggling with poor ratings, especially when compared to more partisan outlets like the liberal-leaning MSNBC and conservative Fox News, and the changes the network sought to make in terms of its content did not include him. According to the Wrap, Lemon is preparing to launch a new show on X, The Don Lemon Show, which he claimed in a posting will allow him to be bigger, bolder, freer. He echoed talking points made by ex-CEO Elon Musk touting the online platform as the biggest space for free speech in the world. His new show will be available to everyone easily, whenever and wherever you want it, streaming on the platforms where conversations are happening, he said, adding that followers should stay tuned.
That's it for this edition of Metro Weekly's podcast. Visit our website for more posts like these, www.metroweekly.com. And please support us by hitting like, follow or subscribe, or by leaving a comment and review through your podcast provider about our team's newest efforts to bring you the latest news. Thanks for listening.